Welcome to Season 10, Episode 62 of the Be Conscious podcast. Today, I am pleased to interview Dani Robison, co founder of the Freedom Family of Companies, a vertically integrated investment firm. Listen in as Dani shares her story of growing up poor and making the conscious decision to change her financial story, creating a multi-million-dollar real estate investment firm. Here we go.
Welcome to the Be Conscious podcast, the show that brings you enlightened perspectives on the frequency of money, life's many challenges, and those heavy feelings that may be holding you back from living your best life. And now your host, Dr. Susan Nicholas.
In this inspiring episode of the Be Conscious podcast with Dani, we're going to talk about money mindset and breaking cycles of generational poverty. Once you begin to bring awareness to generational patterns and then act to break unwanted cycles, your mental presence, conscious awareness, and clarity of thought are essential. Something that has helped me on my conscious journey with mental clarity and alertness is Magic Mind. Magic Mind is a clean, organic 2-ounce mental performance shot that keeps you at peak mental performance throughout the day. And you know what I absolutely love about Magic Mind is that it not only tastes great, but I no longer have those midday energy slumps. Listen, if you're looking for an alternative to the jitters and ups and downs of caffeine, or if you simply want to enhance your favorite energy drink, give Magic Mind a try. You wonder what you ever did before Magic Mind, and if you're anything like me, we'll look forward to it every morning. The Be Conscious podcast audience gets $30 off first-time subscriptions with code BeConscious20 at checkout. That's www.magicmind.com/BeConscious20. Now let's get back to our interview with Dani. Dani entered the real estate market at a most auspicious time, at the height of the 2008 financial crash. Through many ups and downs, she emerged as a top leader in her industry, having raised over $30 million, with current holdings of over $22 million in assets under management. Dani is on a mission to empower next-generation investors with authentic, get-real investor education programs. Dani, welcome to the Be Conscious podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I am excited about talking with you today.
Oh, Dani, this is a real treat because we hear about, I would say, people that break through cycles of generational poverty in the arts and entertainment industry and athletics, but we don't often hear the stories of people that do it, step by step through family businesses. And so this is a really exciting opportunity for me to learn from you. I wanted to start out by asking you, what were you doing before 2008, before you started this firm? What was your life like then? And then what happened in 2008? Like, I think most of us were caught off guard with this financial crisis. But what was it about that timing that you decided to move forward with your current venture?
Yeah, so I actually was a musician by trade. I grew up playing the trumpet, and I got a college scholarship to a Bible college in Lakeland, Florida, for musical performance. Because I was in Lakeland, so close to Disney, I played at Disney in their Christmas brass band for a few years, and then after that, worked on cruise ships, playing in the big band there. And then worked in the art auction business, fine art auctions, and got promoted to the land division. My husband and I. That's a whole nother story, but we got promoted to land, so we started traveling around the United States, probably twice, sometimes 3 times a month, selling fine art in different cities where clients of this gallery were located. And there got to be a point where it was a little bit of a toxic culture there in the workplace. And combined with the travel, and we were just tired of traveling, that I decided that I was going to be the one to adventure off and find a new career. And so I chose 3 things to just test out and see how it went. And I chose the financial industry, I chose the mortgage industry, and I chose the real estate industry. And I started off in the financial industry and just wasn't in love with it. Went to the mortgage industry, wasn't really in love with it either. Then tried real estate. And it just so happened to land in 2008 that we entered the real estate industry and I fell in love. I just knew that real estate was
Mm.
where I was meant to be. And it was actually perfect timing that I learned in that down cycle because it really set me up for success as markets turn. Because when you know how to successfully do real estate when you're in the middle of a crash, you have just greater wisdom when it comes to navigating the market and its ups and downs.
Mm. Oh, I love that. My guess, when I'm hearing you speaking about learning, like getting your chops during a crisis, is that you likely learn to overcome fears very early on. It's almost like the idea of failing fast or early, so you learn from it. And so, uh, can you talk about what that looked like? What did that feel like when you were just starting? And it sounded like you were new to the industry. So what was your first, I would say, investment, or how did you raise your first money? How did it unfold?
Yeah, so because we were in the middle of a crash, well, there's one thing that's important to know about me and how I do anything. I always hire a coach or mentor or partner with somebody who has already done what I am attempting to do so that I can fast track because I
Mm.
love speed. I want to get to the destination as quickly as I can. And in order to do that, I also want to do it successfully and cheat the learning curve. And so at that time in 2008, I hired a coach who taught me 12 different ways to buy and sell real estate. And he talked about the market cycles and he explained what market cycle we were in and the strategies in which would work in this market cycle. So we actually did short sales and I'm going to call it mortgage assignments, but it's really a subject to wrap. If you're familiar with real estate, you're going to understand what that means. And essentially, our very first deal didn't require any money. Our very first deal was a subject to, well, it was a mortgage assignment, so I'll explain it a little bit. Um, it allows me to go to a homeowner. In 2008, a lot of people were upside down. They couldn't sell their property. And
Mhm.
if they needed to sell their property, they needed a solution. Otherwise, they were facing foreclosure. So, what we would do is
Mhm.
we'd say, hey, we like your property. We understand it's you have a mortgage of $120,000, but right now it's actually valued at say $80,000, and there's just no way
Mhm.
that you're going to be able to recover that $40,000 loss without going through a foreclosure. So here's our solution. In real estate, there is something called that is a subject to mortgage. And what that means is that I'm going to take over your payments. So if you have a mortgage of $120,000, I'm simply going to take over your payments on that $120,000 loan. And it's subject to the existing loan. And so what they do is they sell us the house subject to the existing loan. So what I just did is I purchased a property for $120,000, understanding that right now in that market, it's only worth $80,000, but I just solved a problem for the seller. Now, what I turned around and did is I found a buyer who in this market could not get a loan because lending guidelines had tightened. And so they were
Mhm.
willing to buy a house for $120,000 and put a $10,000 down payment because that was my way of getting paid for essentially brokering the transaction. So I
Mhm.
would get paid $10,000. the buyer would now have a house because they couldn't get a loan, and they would be making payments on this $120,000 loan. So where the wins came in was that the seller didn't get foreclosed on, and the buyer was able to get a loan on a property that they knew over time was going to go back to its value and then go up. And so as long as
Mhm.
they were able
Mhm.
to make those payments for a long enough period of time and they didn't have to move, it was a win for everybody. And I got to solve a problem for two different people and get paid for it. So that was my very first deal.
Mm. It sounds genius.
It was really,
But it's also risky,
yeah, it
right? I mean,
is.
there's risk and, you know.
It is. I'm glad that you brought that up. So, it is genius, and I loved that I got to learn that type of strategy in that type of market, and it was the very first thing I learned. I didn't even understand the risk at that level. The risk really
Mhm.
was the buyer not paying on the loan, because then the
Right,
seller
right.
has this loan and it's still in their name, and now it's affecting their credit because they probably went and found another property where it would for whatever reason they needed to move, and so now the buyer's not paying on their loan. Now it's affecting their credit, and now so what I did was I would always stay in touch with everybody, and if that happened, then I would just go find another buyer. And so as I learned more and more about real estate, I actually started staying in the middle of the transactions because I saw this as a risk and I wanted to be able to give the sellers a peace of mind that, hey, now you're depending on me, not the buyer that's coming in here. So then if the buyer doesn't make the
Mhm.
payment, I make the payment and I automatically just go find another buyer who does it again. So I get another fee for finding another buyer. In the meantime, I've made the payment so the seller's not worried about lack of payments on their mortgage. And eventually, the goal is for the new buyer to refinance the property and get that loan out of the seller's name. But if the seller ever wanted to get another property, we just had to show the mortgage company that somebody else was making the payments and they would be able to get another loan.
Wow. Wow. And so this is pretty remarkable. I mean, I feel like that coach that you talked about hiring who I guess educated you on strategies was essential. And I think that's pretty important. I think when people are making, whether it's career transitions or life transitions, that having someone that's been there, done that is essential. So you can, I guess, not recreate the wheel and avoid those early pitfalls. And some of those early pitfalls, I would imagine, are your own fears. Maybe perhaps the fear of the unknown, or not, as you said, as you noted, not knowing what the risks are, not knowing where the landmines are.
That's right. Yes, it's much easier to take step after step after step when you know you've got a resource to go to when you have questions. Um,
Mm.
that's not an excuse not to take steps when you don't have the resource. It just it allows the fear to be set aside in a small enough way, because you're borrowing somebody else's experience and confidence, and you've got them in your corner, and that just it propels you faster and you can do a whole lot more.
I wanted to ask you, there you said, you were playing the trumpet, you got into art auctioning and land division, and then you said, I'm just going to pick a career and see what lands with me. So my thinking in that is that you likely didn't like go to school for it or have certifications or credentials to do this kind of work. Where did all of that come in? Getting, I guess, your real estate license. And when you tell a story, I know that some pieces or steps are missed, but how did you get comfortable in your own self, like without, let's say, without your mentor?
Um, Again, I think I go back to, the coach thing. I went to school for musical performance, so I wasn't educated in the financial industry. I wasn't educated in the mortgage industry. I wasn't educated in the real
Mm-hmm.
estate industry. I just believed in finding people who would be able to coach me along the way so that I can learn and understand if it was something that I liked. And I committed myself to giving each profession a year. to see if I truly liked it, because sometimes it takes some time to
Mm.
become a master of your craft, in order for you to
Mhm.
start enjoying it, because the learning part isn't always fun, and that doesn't mean that you're not good at it or you're not going to eventually enjoy it. So I just committed to that year.
Mhm.
And so when I went into the financial industry, I had to take my Series 6 and 63 license. And then I had somebody that I worked with who I was essentially under their wing as I talked to, clients about different options for investing. And then when I went in the mortgage industry, I had to take a mortgage license test. And so those tests give you a little bit of background, but certainly not it's like school sometimes. It's not always the things that are on the test that you actually use in life. So each one,
Right,
I
right.
took the necessary tests to be a part of that industry, and then I found somebody in the industry to mentor and guide me along the way. And even when I went into the real estate industry, before I found the coach that I mentioned before, I found a broker who was she did traditional real estate and real estate investing. And I didn't even know at that point in time that I was going to need both of those skill sets. So it was just one of those things where the universe gives you exactly what you need, even though you're not even aware of it, because it was 8 months
Mhm. Mhm.
trying the traditional real estate route to do one deal. So we had a lot of savings that we blew through in 8 months trying to transition into the real estate world. So it was really fortunate that I was able to tell that broker, "Hey, I want to learn investing. I'm going to start researching it," and she was completely on board.
Oh, that's wonderful. Can I ask you, so how did you grow up? Like in your family, was there this type of mindset? Like what was your money mindset growing up? And did you have to make some significant changes in that mindset to get into real estate investing? Like, did you have to change how you felt inside, what you believed and thought? Or was this kind of a natural thing and, a handed down thing in your family?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I love talking about money, and I love talking about limiting beliefs and fears and all the things that come with it, because I think our relationship with money is one of the hardest things to navigate in life. To
Mm-hmm.
answer your question, I grew up in a family that was poor. We didn't have a lot of money. We ended up moving around a lot to, foreclosure homes where we were able to stay in it, like while the bank was, waiting for it to sell. Like we were allowed to rent it. I just remember moving a lot and not always having a whole lot
Mm-hmm.
of money. And I just remember as a kid, I'm not even sure exactly when this happened, but I remember knowing that I didn't want to have kids myself. I just knew that I was going to grow up, I was going to be successful, I was going to make money, and I was going to make it for me and my family and everybody else that I could help that were living in these conditions where they didn't have enough money, or they're just working paycheck to paycheck, because I just saw how hard that life is. And yet
Exactly.
yet I see people, around me at the church that we attended, so successful and so much, more than enough. And I was like, I want, like, why is it that way? Why do some people have more than enough
Mm-hmm.
and some
Mm-hmm.
people are just barely getting by? So I just made a commitment that I was going to figure it out. And I think I spent my life kind of unknowingly remembering that I made that decision as a child, and just constantly in the pursuit of how do I find what I love, and how do I find the success to make sure that I never have to be worried about money ever again.
Mm. So I love that you said that, because you said you made a choice and you didn't even remember that you made that choice as a child, but you saw a disparity. You said, how come some have more than enough? How come we're barely getting by? And then making a decision that that's not going to be the life that you lead, and that you're going to try to figure it out. You said, I'm going to figure this thing out. And in my experience, I remember being, also growing up in what would be considered poverty in this country, in a housing project. And everyone around me was poor. And as a 5-year-old child, I remember standing outside and looking at the environment and kind of, taking my own 5-year-old inventory of the circumstance that I was born into. And I told myself that this is not the life that I wanted, that I wanted something different. Now, how I got there and what I mean, I hadn't seen anything different, but I knew it could be different. Like there's something in me that knew that this wasn't the only way to live. And in my childhood brain, I thought, well, I'm I can be good at school. Now I'm in kindergarten when I'm thinking about this stuff. And I just thought that I'm just going to study really hard so I can learn my way out of poverty. And since I embarked on that journey, I mean that had been a driving force for decades, of me educating myself so I could get out of poverty. And what I didn't realize at the time, and even into my 20s and 30s as I'm going through higher and higher education, is that you can geographically move away from that housing project or that life that you started in. You can be educated to the nines, but you can still carry within you belief systems and fears, shame, guilt when it comes to money. And that no matter how much money you make, and I see this a lot with athletes, or even actors, performers who didn't come from a lot, and then they break through and they make it, if you will, financially, only to lose it all. Whether they lose it with spending or fraud or bad investments or drugs and intoxication or vices, whatever they've got going on within them, they'll lose it all. So that whatever that is, whatever that energy is, that vibration within them, the belief systems, the feelings, they haven't been resolved despite the material success or the material wealth. And so I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on, when you look at your experience, maybe recognizing how rare it is. And what are you noticing with people that you're working with? Because particularly in the early part of your work where you said, I'm looking at people upside down on their mortgage, they're going to go into foreclosure, concerned about mortgage payments. Those people are also struggling financially. So what are you noticing in your business, with yourself, with your clients, with regard to people's money stories and money beliefs?
Yeah. Wow. There's so much that I want to hit on what you just said because, man, you hit on so many powerful points that, um, man. Okay, let me start with um, the people who are in a position where they don't have money, and like the seller that I talked about that I work with, who are in a position where some of them it wasn't even a money situation, right? It was a market situation, and they lost a lot of equity and then didn't have enough to be able to solve the problem without a creative solution. But I will say people who
Mm-hmm.
are not doing well financially for whatever reason, that whatever life has handed them. I really truly believe in your story and my story. We both said that in some way, shape, or form, we made a choice. We made a choice that this was
Mm-hmm.
not going to be our story, that we were going to be in pursuit of a better life, of doing something different, of finding a better way. And I truly believe in abundance and that there is enough in the world for absolutely every single person that wants it, that desires it, and that truly believes they have the power to choose the life they want. And I think that's the key piece that is missing in so many people's lives is they don't embrace the innate power they have within them to make a choice to do something different, to change their surroundings, to pursue something greater and bigger than themselves. And the suffering of life becomes familiar. um, the suffering of life becomes something that brings them fear of change. When you hear the phrase, feel, it's not just a fear of failure, sometimes it's a fear of success. I think that's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the reasons why people will find success. For those that choose and embrace the power that they have to make that change, they'll find it and they'll get there and then they'll lose it.
Mm-hmm.
For feelings of the fear of I've made it and now this is scary because it's different than what I know. I'm not
Now what?
familiar with
Yeah.
this. And then that goes into, am I deserving? Was this an accident? Am I worthy of this type of wealth? And all of the limiting beliefs for people who were raised in situations like you and I were raised in, we get to the point where we're finding exactly what we knew was possible, and that those things creep up
Mm-hmm.
of I'm not sure I'm
Right.
where I'm supposed to be. Maybe this was an accident. Maybe this was luck. And we end up falling backwards as a result.
Right. And I think there could also be some guilt in there where you feel like,
Mm,
it kind of goes into that deservedness kind of belief or the self
yes.
worth, where you think, who am I to have this when my family and everyone that I know and grew up with are still in poverty or struggling? Or who am I to have so much when others have so little? And so I think covertly, those types of beliefs are running in the background. It's kind of like, as human beings, we have this operating system, and that is informed by, the family unit, the community, the culture that we grew up in, the societal norms and constructs. And then all these things are they're running in the background, taking up CPUs, they're just running, running, running. And because we were born into it, it's kind of like we don't recognize it anymore. It's just how we've always felt or always thought or always perceived. It's normal. It's normal. And so even the things that are uncomfortable, they're familiar, and people will stick with what's familiar even if it's harming them. And I
100%.
yeah, I just feel like this is such an important thing, because when you grow up with not enough and you see people that have broken through only to lose their wealth, you think, what, you're a million, how could you lose $30 million, how could you lose $100 million, how could you go back to zero? Not recognizing that there's an energetic vibrational component to our consciousness, to our beingness, that we are energy at our core. And that
Yes.
so this is how I break this down. I believe that our feelings, they are meant to be felt. And I believe our feelings ultimately are the language of the universe. And what we truly feel in our hearts, like that is, our hearts are give a more pure message, a more pure kind of resonance of what's really going on inside of us. We can have it in our mind to fake it till we make it, and have all sorts of rhetoric and grievances going on in our brain. But I believe the universe, as this creative substance or the substrate of all creation, however you want to think of it, relies on our heart, the vibration resonating from our heart, to know what we truly want. And so what happens is we'll think one thing, like, I want to be rich, or I want to be financially free, or I don't want to be in this environment, or I want something better for myself and my family, or I want to break through this cycle, only to feel deeply in the recesses of our soul that we're not worthy, or that if I have more than my family, then it will harm the relationship. We won't have anything in common, or it's going to be stolen from me. It's kind of like the people that sleep with a gun under their pillow when they win the lottery, or they're going to be cheated or shamed. And so they have a incongruency. They have a mixed vibration. They'll want or say or think perhaps one thing, but they'll feel something very different. And then I believe the way that the universe works is it wants to give us what we truly want. But again, it's relying on what signals come from our heart. And so if from my heart I have an energy of lack or scarcity or deprivation or fear, what the universe shows us are more things to be fearful about, more experiences of scarcity and lack. because that's what we're truly feeling. And so I believe the frequency of our feelings is the language of the universe, and that we must be mindful of what we're feeling. And so the idea, Dani, I think is when I go out in life and I say, I'm going to do this or I'm going to change it, it's more than changing your mind. It's more than changing your location.
Well,
It's more of changing your clothes, more than changing, your appearance. You have to also change your vibration, like the energy that's resonating from within you, because that is the true determination of your reality. And no matter how, I would say, educated you are, you can still fall prey to this thing which is the feelings inside of our heart.
I couldn't agree more. You said it so very well. I love, we can use, God, source, universe, higher power. So many words for, I think, what we're all talking about is the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. I believe too so strongly that the universe wants everything for us. It wants us to have every single luxury, or desire of our hearts. And it is up to us to be able to hold the energy, in order to sustain those things. So when you see people have this great success and fall backwards, I believe it's part of not being able to sustainably hold the energy and the vibration of having that level of success. And it comes down to the inner work, that we're doing, of
Mm-hmm.
what is it that we need to make ourselves aware of and overcome in terms of success, worthiness, deservingness, something that's blocking us for one shape or form, because the flow got us there somehow. We just weren't able to hold it. And if you
Mm-hmm.
can go back and understand what that is, and do that, self reflection, I think that's what ultimately changes the game. And everybody's different. And I love how you talk about the feelings being the language of the universe. I've always thought of it as the language of my soul. Like when I'm doing something where
Mm-hmm.
I receive energy, I am full of energy, like overflowing, or if I'm in a position where time is just flying by, like I have no aspect, like no understanding of time, and 3 hours went by and went, what? It felt like 2 minutes. That is my soul and my body telling me, hey, you are right where you should be. You are doing what you are supposed to be doing. This is your purpose. This is what you're meant for. Because it's the love and the joy that comes from that raises your vibration and allows you to bring something to the world that maybe you didn't even realize was something that you could provide to the world, that created so much
Mm-hmm.
value. But it is very, very hard when you talk about scarcity. This is something that I've seen, even millionaires who can hold the energy of their success and stay millionaires. They will speak and understand and are aware of their scarcity mindset. And a lot of it comes from people who have lived lives like ours. When you come from nothing, it is very
Mm-hmm.
hard not to want to protect all that you have when you get there, and or
Yeah.
feel like I finally made it and I'm going to spend it on things that I never got to have before. And there's
Mm-hmm.
there it just comes down to I've gone through the cycles. I've gone through the feelings. I've gone through the work to understand what it is. And there was a time, I think you and I were talking, maybe a couple weeks ago, about I realized that there was two big things in my life when I was still dealing with some money beliefs, and one of them was I wanted so desperately to give back to people who weren't making as much money as I was, because I remembered what it was like to grow up that way and see other people who are making money and not to have, what they had, the luxuries of life, or even just the conveniences,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have. And so I had
Yeah.
such a heart for giving back, but that was a draw on some of my ability to hold the energy of success, because I wasn't thinking abundantly. I wasn't thinking that I could have it and give it too. I was thinking I had to protect it,
Mm.
like had to keep it. I couldn't give it to myself. I had to keep it to give to other people because I had enough. And the second that I realized that that was a scarcity mindset of my own, things shifted for me, and I started making more money and being able to hold the energy of making that money. And I know millionaires who are afraid of buying nice watches, who are afraid of getting that nice car or a house that they really want, because they're afraid of,
Mm-hmm.
what if I lose the money that I have? Like, I just made it. I should probably just keep it in, in my bank account and just make sure that it's protected.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
what if people judge me? What are people going to think of me because of the guilt that you talked about? Like, there's other people
Mm-hmm.
that I know that haven't had the success I have, and that doesn't feel fair. Why did I deserve it and they don't deserve it? So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
every
Mm-hmm.
single one of those things. If you're able to identify what it is that you're thinking and you're feeling, and you make yourself aware of them, and then come to terms, however, whatever that means for you, with that. For me, another thing at the very end was deservingness and being worthy. Like, I am living such a better life than everybody I knew growing up, even to this day, and it keeps getting better and better. The more I'm able to hold the energy of this type of success, and it felt a little weird. It felt like it wasn't fair. It felt like, do I deserve to be here? And ultimately, it came down to, I worked really, really hard to get where I am today. And the reason I can take care of my family and those I love and give to others is because I got to where I am today. And if I fell trapped to that guilt and fell backwards and couldn't hold the energy of this level of success, I wouldn't be able to give to my family. I wouldn't be able to give to the other people that I had such a deep
Mm-hmm.
passion for. So I had to, like, just work through those feelings and understand that, just like disease and us being sick in health, we can be sick in our bank account. It's its own financial disease of, if our bank account is sick, we
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
do what we want to do, and we have to be aware of those limiting beliefs that are holding us back, because the only way we can do good things in this world and really show the abundant nature of the universe is by continuing to do that inner work and continuing to give back and continuing to move our money and help others.
Mm. This is so amazing. I loved how you shared with us the two things that you had to introspect on, to hold that vibration of abundance. Because I think that is so important. I mean, let me say, it's vitally important. I would say that's the key. It's truly the holy grail. Is this idea that we recognize that there's these patterns or these signals or perhaps these beliefs. Let me put it this way: sometimes it's so familiar to us and we've always thought a certain way or behaved a certain way that we don't even think of it as a belief. And so it's just how I
Yes.
am or how things are. If you ever hear yourself saying that, there's a belief underneath that. And so some of us are so, how would I say it? We're so ingrained, or it's so ingrained, these patterns, that we don't recognize that they can be changed, that they are in fact beliefs and that they can be changed. I think another key in your journey was that you said you found something that you fell in love with. And the vibration of love is the highest that there is. And so you do what you love. That's, you're light years ahead. Because what most people do, Danny, from situations and circumstances like ours, is we work a job to pay bills. We look at we're like, is that going to pay me? Not, do I love it? Am I good at it? Can I give
Yes.
back? Am I fully actualized? No, it's, can I make my, rent? Can I get by? And so that's exactly what they do. They work to pay bills. And some people hate what they do, that it actually kills them. It's like death by a thousand cuts.
Hmm.
You've been so generous into sharing what you believed, what, was hurting your vibration. And I'm going to share a couple of things with mine because I think it may resonate with people. And, the idea about this show is to help people. So, a part of my money story involves shame, shame surrounding money, shamed around how money was earned, or shameful acts because there was no money. And so I termed this the prostitution energy because I believe this is what I was carrying inside of my own soul. And I grew up in a circumstance where there was prostitution and no one talked about it. It was an unspeakableness. And so as a kid, though no one ever said anything, I knew something wasn't right or didn't feel right. And there was a lot of secrets and hush hush about this thing. Well, as I got older, I could put a name to it, and that there were prostitutes in my family. My grandmother, for one, and she also ran her own brothel. So even though I never, well, let me put it this way, I did not have to do that. I did not believe that I had to prostitute myself to live or to earn a living or to raise my family. Still, I carried the energy within me nonetheless. That's what I was born into. That was the frequency, that was the vibration, that was the energy, that was the circumstance. So how could I come out of that unscathed? And so there was a lot of stuff around sexuality, around money, around working for money. That was a blind spot. That was one of those things that was running in the background of my operating system that I could not put my finger on, but was creating that sickness in my own bank account, in my own financial life. And I just couldn't get to it. Like even though I could speak it and I could put a name to it, the vibration was within me nonetheless. I did not know how to transform it. And so I want to share with anyone who's hearing this, if they have something, like something is holding you back, but you don't know what that something is. You just know it's something because your life isn't right. Like, no matter what you do, how smart you are, how talented, you still cannot get this financial thing right. You keep falling back to zero. Is to begin what I call this process of introspection, of asking, what is this? Because it'll be a pattern. You'll notice it's something that's been going on over and over again. It's this tired old pattern. And I think you have to get uneasy about it. You have to like just demand, like, what the fuck? Because it will persist. It's not, it doesn't even belong to you. It's something that you came with. You came into this life with. And now once you bring awareness to it, you can actually begin to transform that, to transmute that energy. Sometimes we are bequeathed beliefs that no longer serve us. It may have served my grandparents or great grandparents who found that it was the only way. But in this time and space, it doesn't serve me. Yet I hold it nonetheless, just like we inherit our genes from past generations. Could we not inherit their beliefs and those heavy, dense feelings? And so I think this is more important than anyone can know, because this harms us. I believe, just like you believe, Dani, that the universe wants you to do well. It wants to give you everything that you desire. But we don't realize that we are desiring the same old patterns because we have not transformed the energies within us. We have not taken awareness. We don't even believe that it can be different. But it has to start somewhere. It has to start with recognizing it as a belief and believing that, just like the belief in Santa Claus, when you begin asking questions of it, that belief is transformed.
That was super powerful. I love your story. Thank you for sharing it.
Oh, Oh, thank you. Well, I think, Dani, that piece is still, that thread is still running through my family, and it's caused a great deal of hardship and pain and struggle. And I don't know anyone else in my family, just like you may not know anyone in yours, that has stood up and said, I'm going to change it. I'm going to live differently and be differently and believe that it is possible for you.
Yes.
Well, I want to ask you, as we're getting to the hour, what advice would you give to someone in your community, in your business, in your life, if they are struggling with this type of um, ancestral generational stuff, these energies, these belief systems that hold them back? What would you do, let's say, in the realm of finance? I'm sure that in the real estate business, people may come with money, but they come also with their beliefs. Is there anything any advice that you offer them if you recognize that this is existing within them?
Yeah, I think the very first step is understanding that you are a powerful being, and you have the power to choose at all times. And the life that you may be very familiar with right now does not have to be the life that is yours 1 year from now. Every single year in my life, I change for the better because I do the work. And I really focus in on why things are not the way I want them, and what am I believing, how am I making decisions, and what are the patterns that are holding me back. And opportunities like people are taking to listen to this podcast is kind of like a coach to me. Like when I get to hear from people that are on a similar path or have been where I've been and can share with me experiences like you've just shared, and allow me to see the truth that I may not have known otherwise, I think is the first step. So if you're working through inner beliefs, or traumas or ancestral issues, I just encourage you to continue listening to podcasts like this, and finding your circle and doing the work, taking time to be quiet and asking yourself, questions and identifying the patterns. And then when it comes to money, I have found that the easiest thing to do is take the smallest of steps, because the smallest of steps when it comes to money over time winds up being quite a big, gigantic step. And, people are thrilled with the confidence it brings them after the fact. And I'll share it this way. I'm going to talk about a team member in my company who, her and her husband, uh, decided that they were going to invest, and they had been talking about this for months and months. And one of them was, didn't just he was scared. He had a lot of fear behind it. The other one was like, hey, we don't have to invest a lot, but maybe let's just give it a try, because I see people invest all the time and they're making all this money, and yet we aren't. We're living in this belief of scarcity and of fear. And she said, let's just take just a little bit. So together they agreed upon something that was comfortable for them both, to put in for a short period of time, so that they could experience, what it would be like to, I guess, part with this money. And part of them was saying, okay, we're going to take this risk, but it's small enough that if it doesn't work out, it'll be okay. And so they invested the money, and I don't even think it took them 3 months before they just went, wow, this is amazing. The feeling and the confidence that we have now, because we simply just took the first step. We took the step that put power into our hands, and the choice and control back in our lap, was the piece that was missing for us. And then they put in more, and then they put in more. And now they're actually showing other people within our company going, we've been invested in this, for a year and a half now, and this is how much we've made. And it's helping other people take that first step. And sometimes when you're working through fear of change and you're working through, you're pretty comfortable with the familiarity of who you've been and who you are right now, it's the smallest of steps that gives you the confidence to realize that you can have a better life. And so that would be my encouragement, is to don't try and take the big leap. Just take one small step, and that one small step will lead to another. And over time, you won't recognize yourself, because that's been my story.
Dani, this has been a wonderful conversation. Can you let our listeners know how to find you and learn more about you?
Absolutely. So, freedomfamilyinvestments.com is our website. You can go to chatwithfreedom.com. It's going to take you to the same place, but it will take you directly to a page with a calendar of our investor relations team. So you can book a call if you want. There's no obligation. We're very much like what you hear me doing right here. We just talk to people. We explore financial situations. We explore goals. We provide options, we provide opportunities, we educate. Many of the people who work with me now have hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions of dollars with me, and they started with something very, very small to take the first step and get comfortable, to understand, get educated, and have their money working for them on the side. And it's been an incredible experience. So if that's something that's of interest to you, I just encourage you to at least take that first small step. And you could be on the phone with us 10 times before you ever choose to invest or never choose to invest. But at least you're taking the power back into your hands, so that you can live a better life.
Thank you so much, Dani. This has been a great pleasure.
Thank you.
Interested in giving Magic Mind a try? Get up to $30 off your first subscription with code BeConscious20 at checkout. You can claim it at www.magicmind.com/BeConscious20. The link can be found in the show notes. I want to thank you for taking this inner journey with us today. And whether you are coming or going, looking inside or out, remember to be conscious. If you loved this episode and if today's message resonated with you, please subscribe, rate, and review the Be Conscious podcast. It helps listeners just like you find intriguing and transformative content. I also want to know what inspired you and what conscious topics you would like to hear more about. And if you want, you can share those thoughts and questions with me at info@susannicholas.org.
Thanks for listening to the Be Conscious podcast with author, TEDx international speaker, and conscious coach, Dr. Susan Nicholas. Be sure to connect with her to stay up to date with her latest news and works. Learn more about her conscious speaking platform at susannicholas.org/speaking. Stay tuned for the next thought-provoking episode. And whether you are coming or going, looking inside or out, remember to be conscious.